So what I have up on the screen is that perpetual, what I call a perpetual payroll program. And as you can see, I've written for chapter 2, I did a console, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7, I did Windows Forms. I went back in 6 and redid the console to add the stuff that we had covered so far in it. But what I wanted to show you, because the question got asked, I think this is the one I got up. Let me double check. I'm going to close this and this. Bring this up. All right. So you've got a total number of employees, a total gross pay, etc. What I'm going to do very quickly, hopefully, I'm going to move this up. And to try to show you the question that got asked, let's see, yeah, that should work. I'm going to come in and up here, we'll do this in just a minute, so just hold on a sec. But what I want to show you in here, that'll be the total number of employees. Here will be the highest gross pay, the lowest gross pay, and the average gross pay. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so let me put that in. I think this will answer the question that I got asked in the email. If it didn't, let me know after I go through this. So, all right, so this one will be label, we'll call it minimum. I don't know what I just did there. Label min gross pay. So this will say text box min gross pay, and I want to change this, of course, to min gross pay. We'll make it min just so you can read all of it. That'll work. Not mini, that looks stupid. So min gross pay, min gross pay. This will become max gross pay. Which will make this max gross pay. And this one will also be max gross pay, but with text box. And this last one, I'll just call it label AVG gross pay. And we will put the text in there, AVG gross pay. And for those of you who are like, yeah, whatever, I'm not really going to listen anyway, I will tell you, you have to do something similar to this on the test. All right. So if that helps, or, as far as you wanting to at least listen, then okay. So this will be text box, AVG gross pay. Double check and make sure I reset all those. Everything is set here except the menu strip, which is totally fine. All right, I could add menu options to do this as well. I'm not going to do that. You with me? All right. So I'm going to come back in here into this calculate routine. And I'm calling calculate in there. Okay, fine. All right, well, what do I need? Well, one thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need variables for each one of those. Would you agree with that? A min gross pay, a max gross pay, and an average gross pay. All right? So let's create those variables, and I'll just make them right here. So I'm going to have a decimal that I'm going to call min gross pay. And smallest calculated gross pay. I'll have another one that'll be called max gross pay. And that will be the largest calculated gross pay. Okay. And I'll have another one called AVG gross pay. And that one will be for the average. Does all that make sense to everybody? All right. So what I'll have to do is, notice it's set to 0. Okay? So I got to figure out, when am I setting the gross pay? That's what I'm looking for. I could do it in my calculate routine up here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of cheese out because otherwise it's going to be too much code that I got to write. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to make all 3 of them global. All right. Probably I wouldn't normally do that, but that's just the way I'm going to do it here. Now, on your test, typically they don't say, hey, make all these global, make all these local. Okay. But I will tell you that on your test that you will take next week, you are told, you're given a couple screenshots and you're told, make this. Does that make sense? And you are told, write a method, call this, that does this. All right. Okay. So again, I've got my min, my max, my average. I can pretty that up later if I want to. But I want to go down to where I have found and where I have created my gross pay. It's down here someplace. All right, so there's the gross. This is where I'm calculating it. Everybody see this? So this is where it is. All right, so let's see. Right before I calculate the gross pay, all right, so right before I do that, in fact, that's kind of cheesy to do that there. So where am I calling calculate gross pay? All right, validate this, gross pay. Okay, so here we're going to say calculate min gross equals calculate minimum gross. I'm going to get errors because these haven't been written yet. Calculate max gross equals calculate maximum gross. And finally, calculate AWD gross equals calculate average gross. And again, if that stuff bothers you, I'll just comment these 2 lines out until we write those. All right. Now, in order to find the smallest gross, I'm going to need the current gross. Does that make sense to you? I need the current gross value. So I'm going to pass in here gross pay. The routines themselves are going to be pretty simple. All right, but I want to go down here. And now I'm going to write it. So I'm going to just move it way down to the bottom. I'm even sticking it under my clear routines. I normally wouldn't do that. And under the exit, I'm just putting it at the bottom so you can see that indeed it's at the bottom here. So private void this. And it's pretty simple because all I want to say is if gross pay is, no, not that. This has got to say decimal. Let's just make it GP for gross pay. All right. So if the gross pay is less than what my current minimum gross pay is, what do I know? What do I know? What? It's my new minimum, isn't it? All right, so min gross pay equals min equals GP. And there's nothing to return. Now the good news is I'm going to do my maximum virtually the same way, but this will be calculate maximum. All right, and this will be if it's greater than max. Does that make sense to everyone? Do these 2 routines both make sense? Questions? Since I'm doing it, I'm just going to throw the average one in here as well. All right. So this will be calculate average gross. And again, I won't need that. I won't need anything in there because what is that? What is the average gross? It's going to say here AVG gross pay equals the total gross pay divided by the total employees. Does all that make sense? So that should be all three of them. I could have missed something. I don't think I have, but we'll see. All right. You are correct. Thank you. Max. All right. Min, max, max, max. Thank you. Average, AVG, etc. So now I should be able to take these things that I commented out up here. Those, let's see, we got calculate, min. Well, it doesn't like something in there, so we'll look. Oh, this isn't called calculate min gross. This was min gross pay is equal to that. This is, we'll fix these in a minute, max gross pay. And this one is AVG gross pay. All right, so what doesn't it like here? Cannot go from void to decimal. Oh, I've got to return those values. Min and max, see how I made them up here? I made them global. I want to show you this. I screwed up, but it's screwed up in a good way. I made those global, correct? Since I made them global, I could remove the thing equal like that. I could do that. But you know what? They really should be local. So I'm going to bring them back in here, and I'm going to make them local. And since I'm making them local, now what I'm doing in here should work just fine. All right? But notice it's saying, hey, I'm returning a void, and I am. So I'm going to have to change the return type on all three of those from a void to a double, and I'm going to have to return it. So there's different ways you can write the same code. All right? So what do we have to change in here? Well, take it from the top. There's our gross pay. We don't have a thing called min gross pay anymore. We don't have that, so we have to make that. Double. Double min gross pay. You know what? I'm going to set it equal to like 100 million. And I'm doing that. That should be a decimal. And I'm doing that. I'm setting that equal like that to a really huge number. So the first one that comes in will automatically change it. Does that make sense? All right. But now that I'm looking at this, the problem that we're going to have is every time we're going to be creating a brand new gross pay. Did what I just said make sense? Look on the screen. I might have to go back and change it to the way I had it before. Look at this. Right here, I'm going to potentially be resetting it every time. It's not going to keep its value, is what I'm telling you. So if I take these three variables and I make them global, then they return their value. And that's the difference between a local variable and a global variable. A local variable goes away, it dies, so to speak, when the program dies. When that method dies, it goes to sleep. I don't want that to happen. So now they're all global, and since they're global, I don't have to pass any, or I don't have to set anything. So that works. That works. It will in a second if it doesn't. And that one will in just a second. All right, so I got to just pass in the gross. That also needs the gross pay. And for the average, what do we need? We don't need anything. So let's look down here now. And if I confused you, go back and watch this. This whole tape will be 15 or 20 minutes long. So this will be the minimum. We don't need this anymore. And we're just saying if the gross pay we just passed in is less than our minimum, it's our new minimum. If the gross pay we just passed in is greater than our maximum, it's our new maximum. And for this, All right, it's total gross pay, which we just upped, divided by the total number of employees. So the only thing that's left to do in here is actually print that stuff out. And we print it out in two places. So there's the gross pay. We have to start filling in these fields. So text box, min gross pay dot text equals min gross pay dot toString C. The max will equal the max toString, and the AVG will equal the AVG. And the only thing that's left is that we're down here where we're building this message box, building this stuff. All right, now I'm going to have to pass into this, and I'm running out of room, so I'm putting it on a new line. The min gross pay, the max gross pay, and the average gross pay. And I'm getting errors now because in that build employee message box, it doesn't have all of those things in there, but we're going to put them in there right now. Where is that? Print. Right there. So we have to add more stuff to this. Come on. All right, so we've got the gross, one more. Oops, that was nice. All right, so we got the gross pay, and we'll want the min gross pay, the max gross pay, and the average gross pay. So this will have to change to min gross pay, max gross pay, and I'm getting errors right now. They'll be fixed in a minute. We're not passing them in here, but we have to. In fact, we don't have to pass those. Yeah, we do. And average gross pay. All right, so that'd be AVG. Did we make those things? We made them global, didn't we? Yes, so we don't have to pass them in. So if I did pass them in up here, and I don't remember if I did or not, I'll get rid of it. I don't need to pass those in. All right, let's run it and see if it works. Could I have broken something? Well, you know, I just did it in front of you very easily. So Jeff, Scott, hours worked, 40, hourly rate 10, gross pay 400, exception occurred, attempt to divide by 0. Where I got that, I have absolutely no idea. All right, let's exit. There's no divide being, oh, the divide is being done, so there's something wrong in the average. So let's look. Total employees, it should have been incremented. So let's look. Did you see that error that came up? That was, I didn't make that error. That exception got thrown by the program. All right. So let's see, total employees, average gross pay, hourly rate, gross pay equals calculate min, calculate average. Well, I should have added 1 in here in that calculate gross pay. I thought that I did. There it is, total employees. Oh, it's an update valid employee totals. All right, I'm going to move this where I'm updating this, and I'm going to put that into my gross pay routine. There it is. Now, is that going to fix it? I don't know. I'll tell you in about 30 seconds, though. Whoops. If I get the same error as before, nope, then it didn't fix it. All right. The minimum, got to fix that. The maximum, that's correct. The average, that's not right. All right, and the total is right. So our max worked, our minimum didn't work. And I'll tell you what we'll do. This is the way that I oftentimes write these things, is some people find what I'm about to show you confusing. Right here for the minimum gross pay, I'm putting in 1 million. And I'm sure now that the first time I run through that, it should become the newest minimum. It was set to 0, so 0 was the minimum. That's why. This one I'm going to set to, for the maximum, I'm going to set that equal to negative 1 million or something like that. So those should both be redone. All right. Now, the only place I'm having a problem in here then, I think that'll fix those two errors, but it will not fix the average. So now what should happen is what? 400, 1, 400, 400, 400, and 400, right? That's what should happen, so let's see. So right now, the average is not working, but it looks like everything else is. So let's do this again, and let's get a new max and then a new min and see if they both work. So this should be 1100. I should have a new max. I do. The min didn't change, and it shouldn't. Now the average is working, but that sure as hell isn't right. They both made more than that. So there's a problem in my average calculation. Let's look one more time. So I'm going to clear this. I'm going to have a new minimum. 10, 10. All right. And I think I already am looking at it, maybe know what the problem is here, but we'll see. Well, total number of employees is wrong. That's 5, so that's getting screwed up. I must be doing it in the wrong place or doing it twice. 100, 1100, those are both right. The total gross pay is right. So what's wrong is the average, and now my total number of employees, since I moved that line, that is screwed up. All right, yes. So let's look at both those. Sorry, I didn't think this would take very long, but I should have looked at it beforehand too. So this is the total gross pay divided by the total employees. And I believe both of those are global. Total employees, total gross pay. So yeah, they both are. But that's not a problem. Validate first name, validate last name. All right, what I'm going to do is after I validated the first name and the last name, etc., after I've done all this stuff, all right, I'm going to try to see if this works. And if it doesn't, then I'll have to move it again. Plus, plus, tot employees. So I'm going to add one to my total employees there and get rid of it where I've got it here. All right. So let's see. Return gross. That looks like it should be okay. Still doesn't like that. All right, it's doing the wrong calculation. I know for sure that it is. Everything else in here looks right. So let's look at that calculation, and that'll be it then. Total gross pay divided by total employees. You know what? I'm going to come in here with a message box. All right. All right, total gross pay is 0. Well, that's the problem. So total gross pay has not been set yet. That's the problem. All right. So here's where I'm setting it? Total employees, gross pay equals. Yeah, I haven't set the total gross pay yet. I'm doing it in there, in the update thing. So I'm going to move that out of there. And I'm going to put it in my gross pay routine. Hopefully that'll be the last thing I have to change. All right. Oh my goodness. Okay, then I got to pass gross pay in, don't I? Calculate gross pay, and it's gross. There we go. That looks the way it should look. All right, run it again. Oops. It's 400, 100 is 400, 600 divided by 2, and 400. It all works. All right. So what I'm going to do is take this thing that I've just done here. I do want to remove that one statement that I put in there, that message box statement. There. I'm going to comment that out. I'm going to save this and get out of here. I will upgrade the GitHub repository for anybody who wants to see it. Okay? A lot longer than I thought it would take, but you've seen it at least.